Okay, we are not live today, but we are still premiering on Holy Humanist. So, hi everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. Today, on the back of a conversation that I had with a lovely ex-Muslim lady called Halima. If you haven't watched it, do check it out. I will put that link in the description below. But this is basically the reason, once again, why Holy Humanist was born as a platform, because when one woman speaks out, you have no idea of the domino effect that that can have on other women saying, you know what, I actually feel ready to tell my story, or hang on, I have a story to tell, or I've had something similar, or I've reached the same conclusion. So once again, on the back of that conversation with Halima, I've had a very, very brave young lady reach out to me. She's of Middle Eastern origin and goes by the name of Rima. And we're going to hear her story today in her own words, and why and how she left Islam, and obviously everything in between as a result of it. So we're going to be talking about a lot of cultural things related to Islam, a lot of religious things, a lot of the pressures that ex-Muslims face when leaving their houses and trying to start a new life just because of their free-thinking ways. So without further ado, because I think I've wasted enough time, I'm going to bring on the lovely Rima. Hi, Rima, and welcome to Holy Humanist.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good myself, thank you.
Oh, good. And it's so, so good to have you here. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for reaching out to me and wanting to do this. Again, like I said to Halima, I understand the bravery and courage it takes and all of the battles going on in your mind, even leading up to this moment. So I salute your courage, Rima. I really do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I still decided to keep my camera off and to not disclose too much personal information, especially because even though I'm in North America, my family are still basically on the lookout for me, based on what has happened in the past. So I'm still technically not safe.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. Like when you wrote that to me, I was like, wow, even being in such a precarious situation, you know, you've still got the guts to kind of come out and speak out. And the fact that it's such a shame because you're amazing, you're beautiful. I wish the world could hear your story as you, but you know that this is why we're having these important conversations, because hopefully there will be a time when we are able to just live in peace as we are, as our authentic selves, and not be afraid of the repercussions if we come out and speak. So for today's interview, you guys are going to just have to deal with my face, unfortunately. But Rima's here, and this is all about her and what she's kind of gone through and lived through, and just how brave of a woman she is. So, Rima, if you could just kind of give us an introduction, please, into, I guess, where it all began, what kind of a family you were brought up in, what was the belief system like, just kind of, introduce us to that.
So I was brought up in the Middle East, and I was also born there into a very strict Muslim family. Although they didn't believe they were strict themselves, especially because in the country that we were in, it was just it was so normalized to be like a strict Muslim, and if you weren't, then you were seen as wrong, or this person's just doing the bare minimum to go to heaven or whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah. It was very shameful if you weren't a good Muslim, a practicing Muslim. Yeah, so much so that you weren't even able to be friends with the opposite gender. Even as kids, even in kindergarten, they were like, "Oh my God, you're gonna get cooties, you're gonna get whatever." Yeah, it was so
Kindergarten, so young.
yeah, kindergarten. Even me, just even when the teachers partnered us up, it was never with it was always just the same gender, because they were always like, "Oh no, you can't mix with the opposite gender." Yeah, it's just that crazy.
It was a mixed kindergarten, though, at least, right?
It was mixed grades, yeah, but we weren't allowed to actually even in kindergarten, when we weren't even aware of those things. I never really thought about it, but my friends were always girls. I've never had a friend who was a little boy. You know what I mean? My age, I never thought about it, but that's how they keep it all your life, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially.
So is it like you guys going to the mosque, and when you say that everybody's really religious, is that like a consensus vibe? Like everyone's kind of, policing each other's religiosity?
Yeah, basically.
Would you go to the mosque all the time and have to do all of that stuff?
We had to go to Friday prayer at least.
Okay.
And, women, me and my mom, we didn't need to because, we're like women and whatever. And like the thing where it's like, oh, it's better for you to cook for your husbands than and go to the mosque. That's kind
Stay at home and pray, then go out as well. Like, okay,
sure. That's kind of upsetting because, like, you're saying that, like, oh, like, my husband's life now is more important than my life in the afterlife. If you think about it, like, you can just stay and cook for him. Like, wow.
Exactly. How comfortable. God is even giving us a concession for our afterlife to take care of our husbands. You're like, come on.
It doesn't sound very very religious to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little crazy. Also, this is a little bit more, I guess, not so much about Islam, but kids, especially there where I used to live and grow up, we learned that grades are like extremely important. And like to the point that even having no friends and having high grades, you'd be like, oh my god, like he's like the star child or something. Like,
yeah, even though they're completely like socially inept and probably a bit of a loner, it's like, well,
yeah, exactly.
A report. Yeah.
So yeah, you were pitted against kids of your own grade, and like you were expected to be like the one to beat all of them, and like be number one. And like I just didn't really see myself as taking people who are my competition as friends, Mm-hmm. So if someone was like smarter than me or something, this girl's like so smart and whatever, and then when I bring her for like like to hang out at my house or something, my parents would be like, oh my god, have you seen her? Her grades are like A+ and whatever. Why can't you be more like her? Things like that. And like that's what I was like, oh right, I'm just not gonna be friends with any of them anymore. And yeah, I actually got
comparisons, literally.
Yeah, like I was really like, because my parents will find something to always point out to be like, why can't you be more like them? So yeah. I would barely bring anyone over, while my brothers would bring people all the time to like play football or like play like PlayStation Portable, stuff like that. And I was just there like, no, I'm good. I'd rather just like draw in my room. I'm all good.
Parents don't understand that the damage that like does to children, because obviously it's similar, by the way, in South Asia. Not as much in the Pakistani culture, I think, but especially in the Indian culture, grades are a huge deal. Like my friends would take them so seriously. But yeah, it can have really damaging consequences on a child's psyche. But then, so Rima, so how long were you there in the Middle East then? Is that where you spent most of your life growing up?
So I have been there since birth until I was about 11 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, my parents moved us to North America.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, one of my points was like, you are constantly compared to other kids since you gain consciousness. And then like parents would be like, oh my god, why is my child so insecure? Why is my child so, and it's like, because you're comparing us like all of our lives and stuff. Exactly. And what's also crazy is that like we're taught to fear Allah in the afterlife, that he's always watching, like he's extremely intolerant by his actions, right? And then we have to call him the most like merciful, like the most forgiving, whatever, like like it was just like the complete opposite of what you would think is forgiving and merciful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgiving, merciful, compassionate, everything he calls himself after he's just like threatened half the world. You're like, really? I'm supposed to say the most merciful, most forgiving after that statement like that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're basically taught to like fear him more than anything. And there's like countless graphic verses about hellfire, right? If we don't like please him enough, if we don't do things right enough. Yeah. And I remember like as a very young child, maybe like grade 1, 2, something crazy like that, they were teaching us like very graphic verses. And yeah, there's things, there's a juz' in Quran. It's called the juz' amma and stuff. We memorized the whole juz' before grade 4. The whole entire juz'u of that Quran.
Oh,
The first one.
wow.
And what is that just part of
Yeah.
like your
how,
Islamic
like,
studies?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're Muslim, then you're stuck in that. And I was like the star child and whatever. So when I got like, we had like a recitation that we had to give out to the teachers about once a week at least. I think at the end of like, it was like, oh, like Thursday right before Friday, because Friday's like the weekend there. You'd have to like give out this like recitation, and they'd rank it out of 10 usually, depending on how long the surah is. And if I ever got like a 9 out of 10, then I'd be like so angry and like so upset. Yeah, I would always aim for the 10 out of 10, so when I come home, be like, look, I can't do any better. See, like I'm like.
But so did that continue obviously into like life as you moved to North America then, or did that kind of all calm down a little bit as you?
Actually, it all calmed down a lot, which I'm very surprised about, because my parents were always threatening us, saying things like, like if you don't become better kids, we're gonna put you like in the recitation thing again, and whatever. And my mom would be like, like you're forgetting your religion, you're forgetting where you're coming from, things like that. You know, you're disrespecting us by like, you know, like voicing what we want and like saying no sometimes. Be like, oh my God, you're disrespecting us, you're whatever, but they're not hearing us out, you know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And again,
Yeah,
a lot of that is like emotional manipulation that's happening low key.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's insane about that is like I was really young, maybe like 6 or 7. But one of my earliest memories is that I remember that like I woke up countless nights before, like feeling very horrified, because I had dreams of the earth violently shaking and spinning, like according to some verses. Like, was it? I forgot which surah it was, but like one of the surahs that we were
maybe Surah
Tawbah. Sorry.
Maybe Surah Tawbah or Maida, one of those terrible ones.
Maybe, yeah. It was, yeah. It was like right after Amma. I forgot what it's called. But that's the time where like the whole what hell will be like, what the afterlife will be like, what's gonna happen to the earth, what's gonna happen to the graves and things like that. Especially the non-believer graves, like stuff like that. And like sometimes I genuinely woke up and believed that my dreams meant that the day of judgment is tomorrow. It was so horrifying that I was just like crying nonstop, like whole nights, being like, oh my God, yeah. I think around 7 or something crazy like that. I was extremely young.
That is torture for a child.
It really was, yeah. And thing is, my parents would be like, oh, like you're not supposed to cry because you're supposed to be strong and whatever, you know what I mean? So I wasn't able to come to them. I wasn't able to tell them, hey, I had a nightmare, like you see in the movies where they're like, they take them in to like sleep with them. No, they didn't do that. They'll just be like, no, like, you know, I never really came to them when I was having those things. So I wouldn't really know if they would actually have something in their heart to like comfort me when that happens, or if they'd be like, no, like don't be silly. You know what I mean?
And is this just because you think they're like kind of stern as parents, or do you think it's because they genuinely are like, that's the religion, that's the reality, you've got to deal with it and like face the facts?
They gave me a lot of examples as a kid that showed me that they're not going to be emotionally there for me.
Right.
Yeah, things like, I don't know, I was upset about something or whatever, and then they wouldn't really do too much about it. They'll just be like, that's life. Yeah, and that's awful to do to a child, because like all children, even growing up, even as a grown up, you need that emotional like support from your parents to some extent at least.
Yeah, hell yes. And in your parents' eye, well, in parents' eyes who are emotionally available for their children and, you know, supportive, you will never grow up in their eyes, even when you're 40 or 50.
Exactly, yeah.
You're still their child. You would never, and yeah. No, I'm just so sorry that, you know, you've had that experience, because the people that are supposed to love and cherish and comfort and support you are the very ones who are like, you know, leaving you out in the cold, so to speak, when you're having these nightmares based on actual Quran verses about something that as a child you genuinely believe to be true and round the corner.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
It's all right now. So I also remember that like the teachers there, it was like a small private school, but like the teachers there where I used to grow up, were basically allowed to smack like books and like rulers on like students' desks and stuff. They were basically allowed to like do like a loud noise, a loud thud, or whatever they wanted, and they can also like yell. And I remember one instance, one of the teachers threw a stapler across the what's it called, across the classroom because she was so mad, and she's allowed to do that there. Like they're allowed to scare the hell out of you there.
Yeah. And then also like show you probably the wildest like jinn videos as well.
Yeah. They did. You know, like the Asira Nabawiya and stuff. Those things like the tales of like the prophets and things like that. And then they'd have like there were jinns at the time. Then they show us videos of like jinns doing awful things and like people running around and screaming. And I was like really young. I don't even like younger than 11 because that's when I left, right? So I was so young, and like they'd show us all these things, and like, they made you so horrified of missing one prayer, thinking you're gonna go to hell because you missed one prayer. Like
I know, seriously, it's actual child abuse. Like that's trauma that you're embedding into a child's mind from a very young age.
it is, and what's crazy is that it still sometimes affects me now. Like I literally have nightmares almost every night, either about Islam, going to hell, or my parents.
Oh my
All three. Yeah. It's really awful. I have like insomnia now, and like I'm just not able to sleep, especially because like my subconscious is not rested.
shoot. So I mean, yeah, I think obviously it's going to take so much time
And
a lot of probably therapy as well to kind of just get, because this is like, it sounds like real kind of PTSD, right, Rima? From
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do go to therapy. That's what happened. Yeah, I do go to therapy and counseling, and they all said the same thing. And like, I remember the first time I've ever really like seeked help for it from like a counselor in like the university that I go to. I started crying because like it just made so much sense to me. Like all the symptoms and everything just like made sense and all connected, and I just started crying.
Yeah, no, because it does. And when you hear it, you almost feel validated, about like everything you've kind of been suffering and dealing with, and your sleepless nights, and the fact that like they can actually say out loud the things that it's attributed to, whereas in our cultures we would never try and blame anyone, or like the closest people to us or our religion or something, for causing us all these problems and all this grief and all this anxiety and everything we're feeling. But when somebody else says it, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going crazy. This is genuine. Like my body was responding to things that were told to me and that were done to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Like,
I'm glad you're getting help, by the way. Kudos as well for that. Like, you get through it, your life will be better, believe me. And I'm speaking from experience here. So
yeah, it's gonna take a lot to undo like so many years of damage. But yeah, I also just remembered something. So my parents, especially my dad, like super reliant on smoking, like extremely reliant, and he never like shows his emotions like ever. Except for rage, obviously, and disappointment. Sometimes happiness if you do something that makes him proud. So, and yeah, like he would smoke a ton. He would smoke like huge packs of like 20 and things like that in one day, and that's him getting better because he was not able to feel his emotions, and he wasn't able to like be emotionally available, not even for his kids, but even for himself.
oh damn.
Yeah,
He's coming from, it's also probably like generational, and as you're saying, where you're from in the Middle East, that's been continuously so long. It's obviously bad. Sometimes it's like, oh, your parents are also just people, because damn, what must their upbringing have been like? But it passes down onto like him not being able to see that damage, and then being there for you and being like wanting to be better and wanting to give you everything that he didn't potentially have, even like emotionally speaking.
Yeah. He would provide for us, especially like even though we are not like the best financially off. Like, he would still provide for us as much as he could, you know? I'm not saying that he's a bad person. I'm just saying that, like, his way of parenting, and same with my mom's, was really deeply affecting me. And especially, like, not being able to be myself, be who I am with them, and just being shamed all the time, being constantly put down, being abused. All these things really add up. Like, even if someone is a good person, doesn't excuse those, you know?
No, not at all. Exactly. And nothing can if that's also still happening. No amount of one act of goodness is going to take away from all of the times they were emotionally unavailable for you, you know?
Yeah.
But again, I'm glad that, like, you know, you decided to choose yourself, and I want to know how this happened, because I think you went through a hell of a lot in order to do that. So yeah, if you could just please talk to us about what went down afterwards. What was it like in North America, and what were you dealing with when you eventually started to realize Islam might not be real?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the way that it all started was, honestly, it all really started to, like, kick off when I just got into university first year. And, like, I was very, like, passionate about my religion, you know? And, like, one thing about it is that you'll see some, like, Muslims who are very, like, into their religion really, like, talk about it a lot, you know, like, always bring it into context and whatever. I was that Muslim. I was that Muslim who would always bring up, like, oh, like, have you heard of this hadith and so and whatever, and I'd be like, oh my god, it's so fascinating. And and, like, one of my friends, he was not having it. He was not having any of that. But not like in a bad way, you know. He didn't, like, want to make me feel bad or anything, but he definitely saw the flaws in it, and he wasn't afraid to tell me, because most people, they're afraid to debate you about it or, like, talk to you about it, because they'll be like, oh no, like, I don't want to seem intolerant, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So me and him, we were talking about, like when I was a Muslim back then, me and him were talking, and he's not religious himself, right? And we somehow got to the topic of soulmates. Yeah. And I talked about the belief that, like, oh, like, three of the opposite gender can become your soulmate. And he was like, do you really believe that only, like, your opposite gender, only three of your opposite gender can be your soulmate? Yeah. And that's when I really thought about it. And I realized, and I knew it as well, like, in my own heart, that I've actually crushed on women, like, a lot. And especially, like, on girls in my class growing up, even in the Middle East. And I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know what that was. I genuinely thought, oh, like, I just really like them as a friend. You know? I never knew that you can actually be with the same gender. So I was so confused. And so I didn't even know that it was even possible for you to, like, crush on girls before, until I got to North America, and they taught us in, like, middle school, right when I got there, that, like, you can actually like the same gender. Yeah. And yeah, like, you can express yourself to be, like, different gender identities. And that was just, like, really mind blowing to me. Because, like, I started to connect it. I was like, I feel what I feel for girls, the same that I feel for boys. And that really, like, it really broke things. Like, it really broke things in my brain. I was like, well, I didn't even know that was possible. Why no one tell me about this, stuff like that. But obviously, I didn't bring it to my parents, and I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad I did not. So one of my friends, back then, I was like maybe like 12. So I told her one day, like, oh, like, I think I might like girls, like, that way. And she was like, no, you can't do that. You're Muslim, you can't do that. And I was like, what? I didn't know that. And she's like, yeah. And then she sent me references, and I was like, you know, the whole thing about, like, they should be in pairs of, like, men and women. And God has made us in you know? Yeah. And that really crushed me. Like, I was like, wait, so my feelings are really invalid? What's wrong with me? And, like, the more I did research, the more they're like, oh, like, it's just for the mentally ill. It's just for the whatever, like, the prejudices that they have, like, against people who, like the same gender. Wow. Yeah, so I kind of just, like, tuned it out of my brain, and I was like, you know what? I don't like women. I don't like women. And I would just, like, suppress it. like all the way down and try not to think about it. But yeah, so like that opened up when he was talking about it. That opened up when he was talking about, oh, like, so you really don't believe that like your soulmate can be from the same gender. And I sat there for like 2 minutes or three, and then I was like, I don't know. And that hurts so much because you're supposed to agree with the word of God, right? The word of God was literally right there. Yeah. And I could have said yes to be saved from hellfire, but I said I don't know. Yeah. And I was just like, I don't know. Like that night I broke down. I was like, oh shit, I'm so sorry, God. Like I didn't mean to doubt you. I didn't mean to whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you poor thing. Because I'm like, screw that God who's making you go against your like, you know, your actual like natural disposition to agree with this guy. Seriously. He's such a Allah is such a homophobe, and he's just like in the middle of the night. But this is it. This is exactly the grip that Islam has on one's mind, right? The fact that you didn't even know or think it was possible that two people of the same gender could be together, let alone be soulmates. The thing I probably didn't even think it was possible that we could say, well, it really isn't possible theoretically. You're not supposed to leave the religion and be alive, but we didn't think you could leave Islam. Like, I didn't know that was an option.
Me neither. I thought you were stuck with it. That was just like part of you forever.
You know,
and you're so lucky to have been stuck with it and born into the right one.
Right? That's crazy. They're like, oh my God, you should be so grateful that you're born Muslim. You don't have to like go through the stuff of like being like, oh, like an atheist or whatever, and then needing to like convert back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hate to use bravery, like to really mess with you. Like, oh, like everyone was born Muslim, whatever. Like, don't people find that kind of weird? That like they're claiming that like everyone ever was Muslim, and you're just like you're wrong.
Exactly, and it's so demeaning to the other religions as well. Like, no matter what as it's like, but you were born a Muslim, you know.
Yeah, did you know that? I remember one thing actually from very briefly when I was in the Middle East. We actually heard of kids in our elementary school, a girl and a guy. They held hands at recess, and they were suspended.
Oh, what? Okay, Rima.
Yeah.
I read that story, and I think I know about it.
Really? You did?
I was like, come on, this is ridiculous.
It really is. That's probably not the only story. That's probably not.
Exactly, because like even when I went to school in Saudi, right, and like we went to a mixed school and it was like full of expats, so obviously people were coupling up, but it was like if you got in trouble, the stakes were so freaking high.
Oh, nice.
You know, like your entire family being deported or whatever. It's just like, it's madness. So keep abreast of all of these kind of stories to try and be a good
I can't even imagine what their families were.
Honestly.
Oh God, yeah.
So when you were like literally apologizing to God in bed that night after having had this discussion with your friend, like it must have felt like a bit like, I don't know, like you were stuck between a rock and a hard place because somebody's just said something that makes a lot of sense to you, but then everything you know that's true is telling you that is haram and messed up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was like a very difficult position for me.
So how did you navigate that and come to terms with it?
So honestly, I have really like pushed it down until the very end. Okay, so I actually came to terms with it right after I became ex-Muslim, like months after. I revisited it, right? And like honestly, I use fictional characters. As weird as that sounds, I like fictional stories. But like that's when I really realized that yes, I do like women. Yeah. That's how I really got out of it. That's how I really knew that yeah, I like both genders.
So you said like piss off to Allah before you accepted that even.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, all right. I like it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, the secret of Islam is literally to like get them young and make it impossible for them to leave. Oh yeah. That's why there's so many Muslims. It's not because they're like converting to it. You barely see any of those. It's because people are being born into it. It's because, you know, like they're being instructed to like, oh, like make as many babies as possible, have this many wives, have a lot of wives, have a lot of kids, have a lot of that, right? That's why you see like, especially in like places like the Middle East, compared to like the West, for example, like the birth rate is so much higher. Yeah. Especially in Muslim countries, the birth rate is like super high compared to like the West because of that. Like essentially because of that, they want to grow the religion. They want to grow how many people are in it. Exactly.
And that's the thing when they say Islam is the fastest growing religion. It's like, yeah, sure, it is. Even then, now in the Middle East, we're starting to see a bit of a change in the demographics, because in the GCC countries now, where obviously women are choosing to just, you know, enjoy their married life more, or travel more, or study more, and they've got enough of disposable income and a luxurious enough lifestyle to not need to pop out as many kids there. Whereas in other Muslim countries, we see that's literally the modus operandi, and it goes hand in hand with Islam. Like, what is the role of a woman in Islam? As you said earlier, we're not even encouraged to go to the mosque. You're basically encouraged to stay home, be covered up, almost like be seen and not even be seen, okay, outside of the home.
No, not even be seen. And then you've got 4.
Do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about like, oh, make your kids not question where like it's seen as like blasphemy, you know? Because like, if you do that, then like you're just such an awful person. Like people will come for you, like especially there. Like even if it's a kid, I don't really like. Obviously, they might go like easier on the kid, but like there's gonna be consequences. Even for the child, for like questioning, just being innocent, just being like, okay, but why is it like this? Like, why are women all covered up, and then men just like they can wear shorts? You know what I mean? And then they'll be like, what do you mean? Like, Islam's the fairest religion, Islam's the best religion. You know what I mean? And then they go with the argument of like, oh, like girls and guys are different, so they have different sets of rules. Like, yeah.
Honestly. And even that, it's because why? Oh, because the Quran says that men are the main women, because one of them is like providing for the other. No, why are you tied to that book anyways? The authority, that whole book is like crushing women to the core to validate your own crushing existence. So there's 2 massive things happening here. So you're obviously coming to terms with, you know, your sexuality and who you're attracted to, and just like all of that was outside of the scope of Islam. But you're also just having a massive like, what has Allah ordained, and like, what is this all about, especially coming from the strict upbringing that you came from. So what was the bit like, or what happened, what was going on in your life that made you question Islam directly, and then made you leave Islam before even accepting the fact that you also fancied girls?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this is this is when, you know, I just want to get into the mind of Rima here, and steps that you took after that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it was actually a lot of it I owe to my friend, actually, because I never really like I was never able to break it, especially because no one helped me break it, right? And the more that he talked to me about it, the more that I was like, wow, I really don't believe in this. I'm just worst. Things like when he read it, I sent him a few verses, a few surahs. When he read it, he saw hate everywhere. He saw hate in almost every single verse, every single every single surah. It had hate in it. Like maybe 1 or 2 you might not, you know, like you might not find like a lot of hate, but like the whole Quran is just filled with like hating everyone else but yourself, othering, like a lot of othering in it. And like as soon as I saw it, I was like, no, like it's not supposed to be about love and like fearing your God. And then he goes like, you're not supposed to fear your God, you know, you're not supposed to fear the people that you love. And that I didn't believe him at first. I was like, then like the world would go like crazy and stuff. And he's like, no. Like, yeah, and that's crazy too, because like in a way, Allah and my parents are so similar.
Whoa, that's deep.
Yeah, they're both like, oh, like you have to obey me, you have to do everything for me, you have to live for me.
Technically, it's like an abusive relationship. If
it is. It really is.
It's 100%.
Yeah, like,
that's what Allah is doing to us, like for the whole of your existence as a Muslim. and that's what your parents were doing under the guise of like mimicking that kind of behavior.
So it just
surprised me that honestly you came to these conclusions that, or I don't know, if I was a Muslim, I would say this guy came into your life like an angel.
yeah.
I unfortunately don't believe in that anymore. But this guy, I was gonna say he was a godsend, but I'm so glad that he entered your life and he kind of challenged you head on, because like you said, most friends even, right? They're like, religion is not an area we touch. Like, you do your thing. Especially from a strict family, they want to go bend over backwards to like respect you. So, I'm really impressed. But then, so when he found the hate in it, and he was telling you, were you believing him at face value? Like, were you ready to accept all of those things, or?
I pushed back a lot. Okay. You know, we were like, I don't know, when we were hanging out and talking about it, I pushed back a lot. I was like, no, like, the Prophet is the best person you're ever gonna find. Like, and then I couldn't really back it up. And he was like, all right, like, you can believe what you want, but like, this is what I see. And I really think you should give it like more thought, Basically, like, that was like the gist of it. And so, like, I started doing my research in secret, obviously, because if my parents called me, I'd be gone. But yeah, like, and my reasoning for that, to start the research, was that, like, an apostate could never, like, turn down Islam, they were never, like, really Muslim, they don't know what they're talking about. So I started watching videos, especially by, like, apostate prophet. He's really good at what he does. Yeah. And yeah, like, he just took things as they are. He never sugarcoated anything. He's not afraid to, like, really get into it and be like, this is what you're subscribing to. And the more that I watched him, the more that I got scared, honestly. I got really scared. Because I was like, oh my god, I think I really don't believe in Allah. Like, but what if he's actually there? He must be so mad at me right now because I'm, like, doubting him. He must be so mad at me that he's going to send me to hell. Things like that. Like, feeling like I knew that I wanted to leave the religion. Feeling like I knew that it wasn't real. After all that breakdown, after all of these, like, discrepancies in it, all of these lies in it, all the fabrications, and I'm like, but what if he's actually real? What if this is actually a test? It still had a hold on me. And, like, I talked to a lot of my friends about it. Honestly, a lot of it goes back to my friends, like, being open. And I told them, like, I'm really scared and stuff. And one of them said, like, don't live based on a what if. Yeah, like, they're like, don't live on a what if. It's that simple, because all of that is just a what if. It's all just, like, scaring people into submission. It's all just like, if you don't do this, then, like, your afterlife, Mm-hmm.
And that's what most people stick to. Like, a lot of people unknowingly are believing or continuing to believe in Islam or religion because of what you call that is like Pascal's wager, right?
Exactly.
If you worship him, I'm screwed either way. So they think that. But then I would also think that Allah knows, and even if everything's based on your intention, Allah should know your intention and that you're trying to cheat the system. So
yeah, exactly. It's such a way to keep you in, like, 100%. Muhammad was a master manipulator.
Oh yeah, please tell me your thoughts on Muhammad, Rima.
He's just a man that is. He's an extremely horny man who just wanted a lot of sex and a lot of wives, and he really wanted women to just do everything for men. He was like, what would be really nice if we can just, like, beat women into submission. That's honestly what I think of him. Like, all the sugarcoating that he gets and, like, everything like that. Sorry, are you there?
Yep, yeah, I'm listening.
Okay, sorry, I thought you were cut off.
No, I'm loving your dissection of Muhammad. Go on.
Okay, so a big part of why I actually started leaving Islam is because I really liked a guy. That sounds very awful, but I thought I really found, like, the guy that, like, was really everything for me. Like, he's like emotionally open. He's like everything that Islam isn't, which is so interesting. Like, he was very emotionally available, very emotionally open. he wasn't afraid to be called like feminine or like be able to just like express, because men and women, we both have masculinity and femininity, and he wasn't afraid to show that. He didn't feel like he's less of a man because of that, and like he's just like the sweetest person you'll ever meet, and that just like putting that all together, it really made me think about him and Islam and him and my parents, and they're the complete opposite. And that's why I really thought, like, do I really want to stay with the opposite of what I've ever wanted based on a what if? Or would I rather just be able to accept myself and not be abused anymore? And it's crazy, like, it's so crazy because I was always expecting to be abused, especially at home, every single day. I was really scared of, like, my dad coming back home and, like, just yelling at us for like, crazy reasons, like, oh, like, why didn't you do the dishes already? And, like, just always being scared. Or did I want to actually, like, live and have friends with, like, have friends that are actually good for me, have friends that wouldn't, like, do all of this stuff, like, who wouldn't, like, abuse me. And I chose I chose to not live that way anymore, and that was really difficult. It was really scary, and I journaled a lot about it, and I journaled a lot about how scared I am and how horrified I am of hell. But I really needed to reach that point to be able to be happy. So I wasn't able to just stay Muslim anymore, especially because I didn't believe in any of that. Especially because I saw through Muhammad, I saw through what he was doing. And it wasn't to like honor women, it wasn't for any of that. And like if anyone wants more things to research about how the hijab actually came to be. Seriously. Seriously. Because I never knew about that. And my parents were like, oh no, it's just so like, you're like a woman now, and like so men don't like come to you and whatever, and so they know that you're like God honoring. I'm like it's a lot more than that. More things than they ever tell. They won't tell you that.
I'll never tell you that, exactly. And I mean, that's such an embarrassing isn't that such an embarrassing like kind of beginning of something so deep in Islam, that you're putting on every single Muslim daughter or girl that's born into whatever family, if you're a devout Muslim, but you do not have any idea that Omar ibn Khattab was just being a weird peeping Tom.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, honestly, it's crazy. And like I love how much like his word goes in that book.
Yeah, exactly. How does he have more sway than Muhammad at times?
I don't know. And then Muhammad just magically has a revelation. His third eye opens or something crazy like that. He's like, oh, the angel has spoken to me. Allah has spoken to me.
And then in one part, Rima, it's like, wait, was that the devil, guys? Sorry, that was the devil.
Oh my god, I like that so much. With the goddess and stuff.
Yeah, a lot.
Excuse me, what? He literally wrote the fundamentals of his own religion in like 2 seconds. And he was like, oh my god, guys, just backtrack that. I didn't say that.
One of my favorite things to do is like when other ex-Muslim women come on here and we just like roast Islam. No, Rima, this is actually really, really deep. So obviously this guy was like the antithesis of Islam that you would.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally, it sounds like he is. Sounds like a very, very like this is you. And what's crazy as well is that well, it's not crazy, it's very understandable. But as you said, it's interesting that you were kind of drawn to somebody like him who was able to express himself and was not afraid of like the gender like stereotypes that Islam puts on you and the things that it kind of says, and even just the outwardly expression of like love and empathy. Because earlier in the interview you mentioned that even as a child, you would actually be having nightmares about what's happening to the kafir or the non-believers' graves. Such a high level of empathy within you as a human being.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They'll always be like, oh, like, especially in, like, the surahs where, like, oh, like, they won the battle, and, like, they were heroes of Islam. Things like that, and, like, really think about it, it's just like.
And the most honorable are like the Sahaba, who were like the worst of the worst at times.
Yeah, like they would do horrible things, and then they'd just be like, "Oh my God, they're just like the best people. They're just like so brave and things like that."
Exactly.
And like I hate the thing where it's like, oh, like the man who runs for war is like someone that Allah hates. It's like maybe they want to save their own life. Maybe they don't want to fight people anymore. Maybe they want to do like
Human beings that Allah could ever envision.
Yeah,
And Rima, the like exception for men who were like disabled or not able to came about because Prophet Muhammad didn't even like account for him. This guy was blind.
and he was like,
How can I come to do jihad? And he goes, oh, 1 second, I'm getting a special.
oh wait, no, I just magically got. Oh my God, yeah, I just got that from Allah. Yeah, I totally got it.
Honestly, so Rima, what was that like? Because okay, apostate prophet, by the way, shout out AP. He's gonna be on this channel
very soon, guys.
Oh my gosh.
He's always down to come on, and I'm just like, I want to have you on, but I want to discuss something so fun where we're gonna do like a back and forth. So I'm just like brainstorming some ideas, but yeah, we're gonna have AP on here very shortly. But shout out to AP because I think you made just as much of an impact in Rima's story as you did mine leaving Islam.
So thank you for being
Like one of the OGs, AP.
Make a huge impact. Like there's a lot of ex-Muslims, I bet you, that are gonna be like, yeah, I've heard of them and I've watched them, and really helps. Like being able to have that person to just tell you that no, you're not crazy. No, this doesn't seem right. This is not right. And like being able to actually break it down and not be afraid to like offend anyone or hurt anyone, things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Rima, when you were saying like you still had that kind of fear of Helen, like what if? Like for me, watching AP's videos when I kind of was like already pretty much on my way out, I just needed some confirmation. Watching his videos in that manner really helped me to see like the absurdities within Islam. You know, like I was like, laugh at it a bit more than be like upset at what I've lost.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like it's like the biggest shock for me was like, especially the story of how women got the hijab like obligated on them. I was like, I didn't actually look into it. I was like, oh yeah, it was just always there, you know. That's just what Allah said. But I never really looked into like the hadiths or anything like that. So my parents were like, no, don't look at that. I wonder why.
I wonder why. Oh, they must have known. My parents
Oh yeah.
read away. They had no idea. They still have no idea what's in there.
No, my parents know. Yeah. Yeah, but also by leaving Islam, I also needed to leave behind my family. Although I really like didn't want to, and I was really horrified of it. There was no other way for me to really live my truth and live based on what I believe in. If my family, if I still live with my family, because basically they didn't let me. I wasn't free to do what I want.
yeah.
But yeah, even like when I was still living with my family, right? I was talking about that guy that he really like the guy who's like he's basically the opposite of Islam,
Mhm.
and like I really liked him, and so yeah, I was very hesitant at first to even like sit with him during lunch, because prior to university, I don't think I've actually ever sat with a guy on my lunch table.
Damn.
Yeah, like even though I was like middle school, high school as well,
Yeah.
I never. So the first time I was like, what are you doing? People are gonna see me the first time I did it.
You're gonna give me cooties. Get away.
I was so scared of people thinking, oh my gosh, she's such a slut, stuff like that. Like, oh my gosh,
Oh
is
my
she
God,
seriously
yeah.
like a Muslim? Yeah, just for sitting with a guy at my table, like, and yeah, gradually, I held his hand at one point, and Muslim. Thank you. Some guy he's probably Muslim, right? He saw us holding hands, and then he goes, "You guys married?" In public, out in the hallway, being like, "You guys married?" Like, and that just really like hurt. That really shames you, right?
Yeah.
Especially like a Muslim girl in the hijab, having someone like mock you not being a good enough Muslim and whatever, and like doing such a haram thing, like holding a guy's hand. Oh no. Like, yeah, and like I dropped his hand immediately. I was just so embarrassed and so shy. Like,
And it
I
must
was like, I'll see you later.
right?
I swear, literally no respect. The audacity of some people. I was honestly actually even like married at the one point in the UAE when it was Ramadan. I understand it was Ramadan. Like I got a peck on the cheek, and this woman was like, I'll call the police. And I was like,
Just because it's 6 minutes.
before iftar, and you're that like,
No, kiss on the cheek.
yeah. And she was so disgusted because it's Ramadan and we were out in public. And
Oh yeah, definitely. There's like no kissing, no holding hands, no any of that.
oh yeah.
No.
I mean, Rima, these people hate the thought of like Valentine's Day and like expressing
Oh yeah.
love or expressing love to your love, you know, unless you're fully covered up and being beaten behind closed doors. Happy marriage, Islamically.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
So that was a defining moment when you got told that.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, despite that, I actually kept going. Like I needed a day or two, like as like a break a little bit. But like I actually kept going. Like, you know, I like this guy. I wanted to have a relationship with him, and like that should be my business. And that's when I like started to really not believe in Allah too much. But you know, the thoughts of like, oh, like I'm gonna go to hell and stuff still crept up. But that's when it was like really weakening. I was really like coming to reality. Really like, and yeah, and at one point, I decided that I wanted to lose my virginity with him, right? And I felt so embarrassed afterwards. But yeah, but what's really crazy about that too is that like at night, like we were like playing video games, just chilling, right? And I felt really happy. I felt like a pure human being when I didn't think about God. I felt like I did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I felt like I was just expressing myself. Like, yeah, I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. And
You had one of the best nights of your life. Now you're playing video games and you're chilling as well, and you're like,
exactly.
oh, I finally feel human and normal.
Yeah. I was like, I don't understand. Like, but yeah, but that didn't last too long because, like a week or so later, I think, I went up to my dad and I told him.
Oh, snap.
I actually told him, and I was like on the brink of tears. I was like, Dad, I really wronged myself, like, and like, and my dad was so angry. My dad was so upset at me. But what was crazy is that he actually didn't hit me, and I was like, what? Question mark? But I think maybe it's because like we're in the, you know, yeah, like North America and like.
That's laws.
Like, it might be like, oh, like I might, if I start hitting her, I might leave a mark, so I better not. You know, maybe he was like that. He was just like, yeah, and yeah, it was a lot of guilting from his end. He was like, oh, like, what do you think you're doing to me? Like my honor and my whatever. Don't tell anyone else. It's only between me, you, God, and that filthy boy. And then I was like, he actually didn't do anything. I actually asked him to. I actually wanted to, and he asked me if I was sure. Like. It wasn't like he was forcing me or anything. And like, I don't know. And my dad actually wanted revenge on him. He actually told me like, oh, like, I'm going to craft a revenge plan for you so that like you can get back on that boy, but make it not seem like it was me or you. You know what I mean? Like he wanted to ruin his life. He was insane about that. Cause you know, to him, his honor is gone. My dad, he felt like his honor is done, you know what I mean?
Your father's honor between your legs, that's the problem.
Basically. And that's like insane. Like, yeah, that's how much control your dad has on you. Like, seriously, like,
Yeah, and I
telling you, like, you can't like this man. You can't be with this man. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. He's probably really glad that I didn't do it with a girl at least.
Yeah.
He would have a heart attack.
That's so true. But then Islamically, you'd have some ground because there's not much Islamic literature on that. They just don't even think it's possible, you know?
True. Yeah.
There's
men and men's pleasure that they forget that like women could fancy other women.
Yeah, they forgot.
They
No.
so forget.
They
But
never
anyone
looked at
does
the
tell
girls.
us. Like,
People, lesbians could just carry on, bis could just carry on. Don't need them or their input.
anyway,
Well, what was going through your head? Why did you feel like you had to tell your dad? Was it the guilt that was overriding?
It was too much guilt, and I felt like I did something wrong. Cause
okay.
I think I looked in the Quran again, cause you're supposed to like pray 5 times a day and stuff. And one of the surahs that I was reading, I don't. Sometimes I don't pay attention, but I paid attention so hard to it. It was about like going to hell, and it was like one of the shorter ones. Honestly, I can't even tell you because that's how long it's been. But yeah, and I really started to get very like scared, very emotional. I had a panic attack essentially, alone at home, and I was like, just horrified. And I was like, I really need to tell my dad. He knows how to fix this. And yeah, so his solution for me was that we were gonna look for what's it called? It's like the surgery where
And say hi.
yeah, hymenoplasty.
Yeah.
That one.
For people who don't know, it's like to kind of sew your vagina back so it seems like what they
You're a
believe
virgin again.
Yeah, is that thin lining is kind of replenished so you would be a virgin, quote unquote, again. This is something you're supposed to bleed on your wedding night according to.
Oh yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so oh my gosh, because when you said my dad couldn't fix this, the worst thought popped into my head, and you've just literally.
He told me that. Yeah. And I couldn't even tell my mom. He was like, you can't even tell your mom. Like, this is too much. We can just fix this and you don't have to think about it again. You have to talk about it again. And I was like, no, it's going to break me because it's already breaking me. Like, I need to be able to own up to what I did. Like, not even in a bad way. I didn't even think it was a bad thing. I confronted it was so conflicting because I thought it was horrible afterwards. Like, when I told my dad, obviously. But I also didn't feel like it was as well. Like, I was so torn between both. I was so torn between what I wanted and what Allah and my parents wanted.
And what was natural and right vis-a-vis what Allah is demanding you adhere to,
which is
almost unnatural and suffocating.
It really is. Like, how does they believe that like youth aren't gonna like masturbate? Like, it's just normal human behavior. And if you don't do that, then they're literally gonna go crazy. Like, there's gonna be a build-up point. You can't just like keep suppressing what's natural.
Exactly. And also, Rima, it just sets people up for such unhealthy and like toxic and sexually unfulfilled relationships and marriages.
Because
yeah, definitely.
You're not given the chance to be a young person. You're not
given the chance to explore
love, let it flourish naturally. You're not given
the chance to
even accept your body, let alone love it.
You don't even get the opportunity to know the person that you're gonna marry. You're not even allowed to like go out with them anywhere. Like, you have to have your parents there. Yeah.
A mahram. You have to have a mahram.
Yeah. I think it's so much like there's some things that you want to discuss that you don't want a mahram.
Seriously,
how are you talking to a potential
life partner with some guy just being like
yeah, like all up in your business. Like, you need to know everything. Yeah, like you and that's what's awful about it too. Is like you don't have enough like to talk about even. I'm pretty sure. Like, you're gonna be too shy. You're not gonna actually talk about what you want to talk about.
Imagine like first day jitters, but then you have like a observer there, like taking marks.
Also, like the men and sometimes the women. Don't get me wrong, but like they're gonna act like such angels. They're gonna act like they're like perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, you realize, oh shit, I'm screwed.
Exactly, too straight.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't believe in like personally. I don't believe in like marrying someone right away. Like, I would need to date them for a very long time.
Good.
Like, yeah, like just make sure that they're actually the person that you think they are. Because honestly, in my opinion, you need to know how the person is when they get the most angry, how they handle it, the most upset, how they handle it, whatever, and be like, are you actually able to live with them? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, how are they gonna act towards you?
Yeah.
Even when you travel, how do they speak to like waiters?
So, you know,
Oh
that's
yeah,
how
you need to know them.
you really do.
Yeah, and like I hate that so much. That like a lot of parents, you hear they get married so young, especially like the farther back you track down, between generations, right? Especially in like the Middle East, especially the Middle East, they're all so young. Like some of them even younger than 18, and like yeah, because it's allowed, you know, it's allowed there in some countries, and like the same was expected of me. As soon as I turned 18, my parents were like, "All right, it's time for you to, you know, hurry up." And I was like, "What?" You know, and like they're always like, "Oh, you're so ungrateful." Like they always use the thing where like when I wasn't able to do something right from the first time, even they'd be like, "Oh, like no wonder why no guy wants to marry you or something." You know what I mean? They'd always use that.
You're making me so angry right now.
They're like, no man would want to be with you. And like, I really wanted to say back, okay, well, what if I was a woman?
Yes, girl, exactly.
Yeah, I would not have, I would not have been okay that night. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But,
I would just turn back and say, well, I don't want a man that won't even want me for something as small as this. Like you.
right. That's basically how I felt. That's basically what I was saying in my head. Like, I wouldn't want to marry him either. I would literally divorce him.
Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
Something Rima as tiny as like a nose piercing or an extra ear.
Oh yeah. My parents would hate me so much.
Yeah, and they'd be like, well, what if your future husband doesn't like it? And I was like,
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna not express myself for the next 5 years of my life in case this future intense man
So petty.
doesn't want me because of a piercing that I chose to do when I was.
Like the hell?
Crazy. I don't like that. Like, and honestly, screw that.
Yeah.
But then, please, so what happened, Rima? Just a little bit about the rhinoplasty incident. How did that kind of?
Come to.
Oh, hymenoplasty, not rhinoplasty.
Oh, sorry, wrong.
It's okay. You're thinking about nose piercings.
I was hymenoplasty. Sorry, yeah.